I'm Tiffany Meier. A major upset in the Wisconsin Democratic primary for governor. That's coming up right now. Establishment-backed David Crowley narrowly defeats Democratic Socialist Francesca Hong, despite polls showing she was leading heading into Election Day. Abdul El-Sayed is removing old videos where he criticizes American football and 4th of July fireworks. Former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says people who knew about Joe Biden's mental decline leading up to his reelection campaign should have spoken up. And the biggest blockbuster hits and misses this year so far, our picks. Welcome to Tiffany Meier Tonight. David Crowley narrowly beating out Democratic Socialist candidate Francesca Hong by less than 1 percentage point after rejoining the race just weeks out. The former Milwaukee County executive, seen as the establishment candidate, thanking Hong in his acceptance speech today, saying her campaign showed that there are no long shots in this kind of election. Milwaukee and rural voters turned out for Crowley, while Madison went to Hong. Crowley's nomination has some Democrats breathing a sigh of relief, dispelling worries Hong's controversial positions could hurt the party in November. Crowley now set to face off Republican candidate Tom Tiffany, who's warning the Democratic Party as a whole has taken a sharp left turn.
This isn't a typical election about red versus blue. This is an election about the very soul of the state of Wisconsin.
And joining us now from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, is talk radio host Vicki McKenna, host of the Vicki McKenna Show. Vicki, thank you so much for joining us. Great to see you again. Now, after all those opinion polls showing Hong's huge lead, as we discussed, are you surprised, as everyone else, that she lost?
Oh, we are all just in a state of shock that she lost. All the polls agreed. And when we're talking about polls agreeing that Francesca Hong is in the lead by double digits, starting with a 2, I think the lowest amount she was said to have led in this race at any given time was 23 points. So yeah, I think the Tiffany campaign was quite shocked. We were all quite shocked. I'll bet you the pollsters themselves were also quite shocked. Nobody knows how they got it so wrong. I think I can walk through the way David Crowley got this done. I'm not sure I can explain how wildly off the polls in Wisconsin were. I mean, it affected the markets. The prediction markets were a mess because the polls were a mess.
Now, Crowley's last-minute re-entry into the race was part of the party's effort to avoid a candidate as controversial as Hong. What do you think created this last-second wave against her?
A lot of things, I think, went into it, but some major things that went into it. She had made some serious missteps. I think her going on media, on national media, thinking that she wasn't going to be confronted with some of the wild things she had said online, and not having an appropriate answer. I recall her saying at one point on a tweet she had made about Halloween, "I'm just not a fun person." I mean, these are her own missteps. If I were her campaign, I wouldn't have allowed her to go on major media platforms like that. Secondly, she joined a protest in Madison, Wisconsin. Madison's her home base. She needed to get people excited in Madison. Madison's very, very far left, very socialist. And there was an officer-involved shooting that, was one of these Just Add Water pop-up protests. And Francesca Hong joined that protest with a bullhorn, accusing the police officer of executing someone. This is a relatively complicated case. And that teed up a 2-week occupation of a 5-block area that shut down businesses, that disrupted travel, that threatened people's safety, that essentially eliminated 911 service for that entire area. I think she may have burned herself a little bit in her home turf by being someone who thought she was going to be able to gin up enthusiasm by joining that protest. And I don't think that was something that was a small mistake by her. I don't think that's what lost her the election. What we didn't see going on is millions of dollars and get out the vote for David Crowley. Her votes tended to be the absentee votes. Her votes tended to be the young votes. College kids aren't on campus right now, but a lot of those old, 60 plus voters who are terrified of her were able to be reached, I think, in the last 2 weeks of the campaign, the Crowley campaign.
And given all that you just laid out there, how much is the Democratic establishment celebrating today because Hong didn't get that nomination?
They're ecstatic. David Crowley, for all intents and purposes, outside the county of Milwaukee, is an unknown entity. He can be created out of whole cloth. He doesn't have a platform. He never had a platform. This is coming. You'll have to give it a few weeks before he actually has the DNC develop a platform for him. But that's why they're elated, because they can claim he's a moderate. He is not a moderate. They can claim he's centrist. He is not centrist. He, in fact, described himself as not a dime's bit of difference between Francesca Hong and his own policy positions. But nobody knows who he is. And so that gives them the opportunity to use the friends they have in the media to craft a whole different David Crowley to present going into the general.
And Crowley and other Democratic candidates pretty much avoided attacking Hong, but Crowley did run his comeback campaign on being the more electable candidate in the general election. Do you think Crowley can win the general election?
Oh, of course. He's made Tom Tiffany's job much harder. This loss by Francesca Hong has made it more difficult for Tom Tiffany. There are some other things that happened in the election as well that may be problematic for the Tiffany campaign. And these are other offices that drafted very, very hard right candidates to run. The likelihood is the Democrats' campaign, the Crowley campaign, is going to try to use their positions, despite the fact that they're unrelated to the governor's race, to try to trap Tom Tiffany. It's going to cost more money for Tom Tiffany to win. It will be more difficult to run up the margins. This is going to be a 47 to 47 race coming out of the box. And that means everybody's going to fight for the 6% in the middle. And it's all going to be a turnout war in the end. And that makes it harder for Republicans in a purple state like Wisconsin, when the Democrats tend to have a better operation when it comes to voter turnout.
And zooming out a bit here, Hong, a member of the Democratic Socialists of America, lost last night, but other socialist-aligned candidates in other primaries did go on to oust incumbents. Does Wisconsin, though, tell us anything about the limits of this socialist wing of the Democratic Party?
I think what the Hong candidacy tells us is that the limit is don't wear that on your T-shirt. The limit is make it polite. I mean, and like I said, David Crowley's not enormously different from Francesca Hong, but he's not shouting it from the rooftops. He's not grabbing a bullhorn and walking into an anti-police protest. I think that's, I'd seen, James Carville say he breathed a sigh of relief on the nomination of El-Sayed, because he was more centrist. And I'm thinking, on what planet is that guy considered centrist? He's pulled back his social media presence. He's pulled back his aggressive rhetoric. Hong didn't do that. I think that the limits of the DSA is the way they speak about the DSA, not necessarily socialism itself.
Well, definitely a lot to watch here as we approach November. Vicki McKenna, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
And coming out, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt is stepping down. She's leaving the podium. Our panel weighs in on the announcement, and here they come. Welcome back. David Crowley's primary win against a Democratic Socialist was seen as the latest test for where the Democratic Party is heading ideologically. Francesca Hong says she will campaign for Crowley for November, the two sharing brunch today with other Democratic candidates and nominees and emphasizing a message of unity. Can the party pull it off? Joining us now, our most excellent panel, Bobby Ann Cox, attorney and fellow at Brownstone Institute, Mike Leon, host of the Can We Please Talk podcast, and Chris Bob, NTD's political correspondent. Thank you all so much for joining us. Now, very tight race yesterday, defying early opinion polls. Chris, let's start with you. What did you make of this?
Well, Francesca entered the race as a chef, like we learned, but she did not cook. I mean, what she said was she's a chef.
That was good.
So Thanksgiving, she likes it for some reason, doesn't like it for the colonization. She had issues with Christmas. Remember the issue she had with her IT guy who changed her background to Christmas trees. That was a problem. Then we learned Halloween was an issue. A lot of positions that, hard to resonate with the people of Wisconsin. So not so wild here that, we didn't see her coming out. I was going to predict it, but we didn't get to talk about it yesterday. I forgive you. AOC, Bernie Sanders, and most radical Elizabeth Warren did not come out and give her the endorsement. That was seen as an issue leading into the race. There was a lot of commentary about that. But now, we have the other guy. This is an interesting story where you have somebody who drops out of a race, comes back in,
and wins.
Yeah, it's kind of unheard of. But what it is not is a moderate candidate and an establishment candidate. Some people are saying that today, and that kind of bristle with that because we do know that he has supported driver's license, Mr. Crowley, great song, to illegal aliens. Supported giving taxpayer-funded college tuition to the same group of people. Banning law enforcement from asking about immigration status. And I think there was one quote that was, it's not really an admission, but they asked him if he supports defunding the police. And he said, defunding or divesting from the police is a conversation we're going to have together. So I don't know. What you're looking at here is a mixed bag. And I think, just like we saw with Maine, where there's a little bit of a shakeup and a candidate change, that sort of thing, is that going to give the Republican an advantage? Seeing what's happened with the DSA and their influence on the Democratic Party, how is that going to play once we reach to the November election? I think you're going to have a lot to say from the Republican on the DSA and their influence even on Mr. Crowley.
Yeah.
Mike?
My takeaways were obviously something that Chris touched on, a candidate dropping out, coming back in, still winning by a narrow margin, but under 3,500 votes or so. Some of his platform, he'll have to answer in the general when the moderator questions, when we get to the debates and stuff like that. I think there is a conversation about divesting funds from the police for community programs and still having police. Like you can't defund the police completely. You can't abolish prisons because we do need prisons, but private prisons is big business right now. So how do we rein that in? So there are some things that from that platform on the Democratic side that do translate, but that doesn't carry over to the pocketbook issues, which are some of the things in Wisconsin, the median income, the cost of homes, gas prices right now are about $3.13 in average in Wisconsin. Those are the things that Crowley's going to attack Tiffany about come the general election. But is it a conversation about the extreme versus the moderate? I don't know, because Hong and El-Sayed, I don't feel like are the same people, like in terms of the way they ran in the different states. Wisconsin and Michigan are very different, even though they're located near each other. So I don't think it's indicative of this entire national conversation that we're having about the Democratic Party if it's moving further left.
Bobby Ann?
Well, I think Chris made a great point that, Crowley and Hong are both, further to the left, right? That, they're trying to say, well, Crowley is moderate. Well, he's not really moderate, right? It's a matter of, well, how far left are people comfortable going in Wisconsin right now? And what was surprising to me is that, he announced his candidacy and came into the race, I think it was the middle of July. So I think he ran the race not even for a month and very narrowly beat Hong. I think it was less than a point or half a point or something like this. So, and who knows if there's going to be a recount, right? So I think that the law in Wisconsin does allow her to say, hey, look, it's that close. I want to have a recount. I don't know if that's going to happen. But yeah, I think it's a matter of, what's going to happen in the general come November? Are Wisconsinites going to go for a governor that is clearly to the left? Like I said, Crowley's really not that much further left than Hong. Or are they going to go with the Republican? This is going to be a very interesting race, especially because, typically speaking, Wisconsin is one of the swing states.
Indeed, pivoting completely now. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt is stepping down to spend more time with her family. She gave birth to her second child on May 1st and returned to the press briefing podium on July 16th. In an ex-post today, she said being a mother and welcoming a new baby while working in one of the most demanding jobs in the world has been the most rewarding yet challenging season of my life, to say the least. The truth is, since returning to the White House after the birth of my daughter, I have felt in my heart that I cannot be the best mom my young children deserve while devoting the constant time, energy, and attention required of the White House press secretary. And that is why I have ultimately made the bittersweet decision to depart the White House and embark on a new chapter in my life. Now, President Trump has asked her to serve as a top advisor on the outside. Bobby Ann, your thoughts on all of this?
Yeah, I mean, I can understand this. You know, this is not really a surprising situation. It's not shocking news. You know, she's a young mother. She has 2 young children now. And, you know, as a working mom, you know, the demands are great. So I do understand the decision. I think that she was really excellent in her position. She was, I believe, the youngest press secretary. And I believe she also was the only press secretary that was, you know, a pregnant mom during the job. And it's extremely stressful. You know, any line of work like that where you're constantly in the public eye, I can understand the demands of the job were something that she wanted to step away from at this time. So, yeah, you know, obviously we wish her the best of luck in this new endeavor, but not surprising to me.
Mike?
Well, I agree with, I do wish her the best in this new endeavor as being a mom. There's an article in the Arizona Central, and it sums up exactly how I feel. Leavitt was perfect for Trump in the worst ways possible. And the reason is because as a press secretary and as somebody right now who is front-facing for their company in a different realm, while you do need to at times be a mouthpiece for who it is you report to, you do have to also discern what's fact versus what's fiction. You also have to understand how to control the press environment, of which you are a part of. And I think Caroline Leavitt failed in both of those regards. And this is not me saying it. These are factual things that played out from the briefing room that she lied about, and then come to find out later, the administration has to walk certain things back. And that could be anything from what happened in Minnesota, recent ICE encounters. But then there's also other combative issues that she's had with journalists, including some of who are my own friends, some that you know as well. So again, what you said about the motherhood and stuff like that and focusing on that, I'm not going to touch on that. Obviously, I have 2 little daughters and my wife is great with staying with them at home. So I'm the one that told her to go stay home with the kids. So that's great, and I love that she is doing that, and it was kind of predictable given the circumstances of the job. But she failed the American people, in my estimation, given the 2 things that I outlined there. You're supposed to not necessarily always be a mouthpiece. You're supposed to give the information and not be so combative. Give the correct information. Let's wait and not rush to judgment. She didn't do those things, and there's countless arguments with her and Caitlin Collins and other folks from Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, which we wouldn't expect. So she's had all of these. They're all documented. We killed KJP for some of the way she was with the media. We've got to kill Caroline Leavitt on the way out, figuratively, obviously, with respect to how she handled the media in her day-to-day job. I think she failed at it.
Chris?
I'm not going to make the leave it joke, so we'll skip that one. But no, I think, you know, 28 years old right now. Her birthday is toward the end of August. That's when she's going to be leaving. 29, to be not only a press secretary, but the press secretary of the President of the United States before 30 is a tremendous accomplishment, and I wish her well.
I mean,
That's
she was
all.
definitely a very effective communicator, be hard to replace for multiple reasons. But let's move on, because in Michigan Democratic Senate candidate Abdul El-Sayed has been removing content he posted online. That includes a video from 2024 where he said 4th of July fireworks suck, compared football to slavery, floated getting rid of the Second Amendment, and expressed support for the defund the police movement. Now, these removals came ahead of the primary election. Mike, in your view, will stuff like this help or hurt him in the general election?
Oh, sorry, just deleting a tweet here from, this is bad. Like, there's no way to dance around this. This is the Huffington Post article. El-Sayed removed over 100 YouTube videos through the CNN report. Here's what they found in that. When you do that, it's because you have now reflected on it and realized it's bad, so it shouldn't be out there. Hence why I deleted my Twitter, why you can't find me. So that is, I mean, and again, we all do things when we're younger, but now that he's running for this high position, this is not a good look. There's nobody who should be defending why he did it. And of course, with Elon owning Twitter, who knows if that stuff will come out with respect to records retention, how they delete those things. But there's no Democrat that would sit in this seat and defend somebody going through their social media and deleting it, because there's a reason behind why you deleted it.
Chris?
There's many archive technologies out there, so that's why it was so
Correct.
easy to unearth a lot of this stuff. A lot of people, when they're deleting things, that they don't realize internet's forever. It's true. But the quote that got me is, what if we tweaked the Constitution, amended the amendment, and instead of the right to bear arms, we changed it to the right to have health care? So, that kind of thinking that the Constitution is just tweakable, and this is not such as, he's talking about the Second Amendment, obviously, it's going to bode unwell in the general election. That's all I want to say.
All right, Bobby Ann?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. This is a situation where, first of all, if you're deleting, tweets and videos and whatnot, obviously you're understanding now that your position was inappropriate. And, those posts that he did were, from what I understand, 2 or 3 years ago. It's not like he was, this is from 20 years ago, and I was a child, and I was, in college at the time. Who knew anything? No, this was like 2 or 3 years ago. He posted these things that he's now taking down. So I think, voters beware, number one. And then number two, he also reportedly, is against fireworks on the 4th of July, right?
Well,
and
I'm with him on that one. Just waking up in the middle of the night.
Why are you sleeping on the 4th of July?
I may be on the court with him. No, okay, that's fine.
Yeah, and not liking football, and it comes across as very un-American. So I think, like I said, voters, be aware, be educated, and figure out who he is before you go to the polls.
We'll have a lot more games later, but first, coming up, President Trump signing a major executive order overhauling the childhood vaccine schedule. Fewer shots, more parental control. We'll break it down next. Welcome back. President Trump this week signing a major executive order overhauling the childhood vaccine schedule, reducing the number of recommended shots, spreading them out over more doctor visits, and ending the COVID vaccine recommendation for kids. The White House says the goal is to give parents more control over their children's medical decisions and better align the U.S. with other developed countries. Joining us now is Dr. Ryan Cole, pathologist and head of medical and scientific affairs for the Independent Medical Alliance. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you. First, I want to play a clip of the president speaking on his childhood vaccine recommendations.
America's recommended more childhood vaccines than any peer nation, and even twice as many doses as some European countries, and even more than that. Effective immediately, my administration is recognizing gold standard childhood vaccine recommendations for only 11 core vaccinations against the most serious and dangerous diseases, along with the MMR, which hopefully will be split up. You have the MMR, we want it in 3 separate vaccinations, given at separate times. Together, there could be a possibility they're quite lethal, and separately, it looks like they are not at all lethal, but just very effective.
What was your reaction when you heard about this?
I think it's a step in the right direction, and thank you for having me tonight, Tiffany. I think this opens up the mindset of American parents and allows them more opportunity to make those informed decisions that in the past have been more dictated from the top, from the pediatrician's office or the obstetrics offices. I think this allows the individual to actually question what should be questioned. Do we really need this many shots on our schedule? And the children in other nations that get fewer shots are actually healthier than American children.
And digging into the recommendation to split up the MMR vaccine, which is combined with the mumps, measles, and rubella shots, tell us more about the concerns that the president mentioned here.
Yeah, and historically, these were separate shots. If you go back to my childhood, these were separate shots. And in many European nations, one can get individual shots and have these separated. One has to consider how many shots all at once can confuse the immune system or cause immune overreaction, in addition to some of the different chemicals and adjuvants or irritants that are in the shots. So by splitting these out, we can tease out the scientific data better, certainly, but I think we can also protect the body from overreacting by getting too many things all at once.
And for those who are hearing about this for the first time, why were American children getting twice as many doses as our peer nations?
Yeah, that's a great question. And most of these infectious diseases of childhood were on a rapid decline when sanitation improved around the world. So measles essentially was almost wiped out. Death from measles was almost wiped out before the measles shot ever came to the market. And the simple answer is follow the money. There's unfortunately too much financial incentive given both by our government to the pharmaceutical companies as well as to the trade organizations, whether it's Pfizer, Moderna, Sanofi, Merck, you name it, that fund these trade organizations like the American Academy of Pediatrics or the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology. They receive millions upon millions of dollars to keep their organizations going, and then they move forward with recommendations for the shots, which is certainly a conflict of interest. So follow the money is basically the answer. And other nations, because they are not as financially incentivized on vaccine schedules, they're able to follow the science. I have colleagues in Europe that are great epidemiologists, and they do the work in Denmark, they do the work in Sweden, and these children that get fewer shots, more spaced out over time, have better health outcomes. And so for our government to finally recognize this, I hope it becomes codified and we get some of these changes basically changed for the long term, not just the short term under an executive order. I think we will see some better outcomes for the health of our children here in America.
And Dr. We've been seeing states reacting differently to the president's recommendation of the past few days. How do you think this will affect parents getting vaccines for their children around the country?
Well, it doesn't take a shot away from anybody that wants one, but I think what it does is it opens up the exemption opportunities for the parents that are questioning and do want to be more conservative or skip shots altogether. You look at the Amish communities, those are some of the healthiest children. They don't get vaccines at all in most of those communities. And the parent now should be in the driver's seat. It should always be a shared decision-making process, and the parent should have the ultimate say, not the physician. We shouldn't, we should certainly respect the training and the expertise of doctors, but not all of them are doing things, from a point of view that one would say is ethical, because there are malaligned incentives. So I think the parent is now in the driver's seat, and I like that it opens up for attorneys general to look at states that don't allow for exemptions to potentially be penalized, because there are 4 or 5 states that have no exemptions available and basically exclude children from school and benefits of society. And I think we need to change that. Most states do have an exemption of some sort, and this does give the parent the opportunity to say, I choose this or I don't choose this.
And Dr. pivoting now to an individual who had been very relevant to vaccine policies, Dr. Anthony Fauci. Now, more records of him have now been released, including his text messages. Now, one thing sparking discussions online is his concerns about the risks of pregnant women getting COVID vaccines coming through those text messages. Despite that, though, the CDC under him still recommended pregnant women to get vaccinated against COVID-19. What was your reaction to that?
Well, I think it's basically criminal what happened, to be behind the scenes expressing concerns. And even Drew Weissman, who received the Nobel Prize for the mRNA technology, had sent to Fauci many studies showing that there were problems in the animal models, that there were pregnancy problems, that there were grave concerns. Rochelle Walensky of the CDC at the time said, look, these are gene products. Even the Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy at the time, said, hey, I'm concerned, that there could be genetic problems with these shots going into the fetus. for Fauci to have all that information from his circle of colleagues at the time to then go up to the podium say there are no red flags and we're recommending this in pregnancy. And then the CDC itself put forward a study saying, hey, we're going to look at this because it's of immediate concern, and yet they still didn't have the data of the harms. And pregnancy is one of those sacred classes in medicine where we don't experiment. I mean, women are told, don't eat this cheese, don't eat sushi, don't eat this fish, don't put these things into your body. And yet during this period of time, we had government officials recommend women do something that wasn't proven safe, and the long-term outcomes are yet to be seen. It depends on the data sets you look at, but there are some gravely concerning data about pregnancy, loss of pregnancy that happened during the COVID shot period, as well as, going forward. We don't know what some of the long-term outcomes to those children whose moms received the shot. I don't mean to be alarmist, but at the same time, in science, you can't find what you don't look for. And unfortunately, they didn't do enough looking. And this is something that we should never allow to happen again. And it certainly is a black eye on public health to not be honest about what the backroom discussions are and then go forward with a policy that is basically antithetical to the conversations that were being had behind the scenes.
Well, Dr. Ryan Cole, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you, Tiffany.
Coming up, the University of Michigan is changing how freshmen get graded. No more letter grades on their first semester transcripts. A good move or not? Our panel weighs in next. All right, welcome back. We've taken a deep dive into the day's biggest stories, but now it's time to put on our detective hats because tonight we're playing fake news or not fake news. I'll serve up the headlines and our highly trained panel of truth detectives will decide is it pure fiction or just reality wearing a trench coat. So back with me, our most excellent panel, Mike Leon, host of the Can We Please Talk podcast and head of content for DAZN. Bobby Ann Cox, fellow at the Brownstone Institute and attorney, and Chris Bob, Entity's political correspondent. All right, ahead of the game there. First up, former House Speaker, longtime ally of former President Joe Biden, is speaking out about his health before he withdrew from the 2024 presidential race. Now, in an interview with Politico yesterday, the California politician said she was unaware of Biden's decline and never asked him to not run, but she has a message for those who did know but kept silence. Take a listen.
But I do think that those who did know should have acted upon that information, whatever that means.
His staff and his family both, you mean?
Well, whoever knew.
Yeah. Okay.
Whoever knew. The staff is saying the family knew, the family saying the staff.
All right, so here's the statement. People who knew of President Biden's decline should have acted. Fake news or not fake news? Bobby Ann, let's start with you.
I'm going to say not fake news. I mean, first of all, for Nancy Pelosi to say she didn't realize that Biden's cognitive abilities were declining is, ridiculous. I mean, anybody who watched him on television for just a few minutes could tell that, it was almost embarrassing, especially towards the end of his presidency. So, she's sitting here telling people, oh, if you knew, you should have said something. Well, she should have said something. But I think in one report I read that, she said, oh, I only saw him once or twice, but in person. Anyway, so yeah, obviously, anybody that did know that his cognitive abilities were being challenged and declining should have said something, should have done something. But as we know, nothing was done. So, yeah, I'm going to go with not fake news on that one. All right, Mike?
Right? Am I doing the right thing? Not fake news here. So there's a couple things. One of my most viral clips on Can We Please Talk, you can check us out on TikTok and YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts, was when I did an appearance on another network to talk about this when the news had broken and the Robert Hur stuff had come out about, Biden's cognitive decline during that. And one of the things I said there is there's a through line between he's declining and we don't want to do anything about it, but where other networks were making it nefarious and he wasn't declining. all throughout the political cycle of him hiding in the basement and these things like that. So he did have a decline. It's just where are we marking the point of when he started to decline. So I agree with you that Nancy Pelosi should have been like, especially in the last, let's say 18, 20 months, he's misremembering world leaders that have passed away, things like that. Those are clear signs, right? And there's some evidence as well in 1600 Penn right now. But be that as it may, this is not fake news. She should have known. It's just where it actually started and where the dialogue about it started in the ethos out there.
Chris?
Not fake news. We're carried unanimously here. But, you know, I'm not a doctor. I'm a journalist. I didn't really know what was going on with Joe Biden at that time. But I was really shocked that some media outlets didn't think it was important to make any mention of what we were seeing. And some did cover that there was something wrong and pressed lawmakers about it. And Nancy Pelosi is one of the lawmakers that was pressed about it. You know, initially she went and she was saying, he makes a mistake from time to time. We all do that. That's a direct quote. Then she said, age is a relative thing. They were like 80, he's a kid. He's younger than I am, so he's a kid to me as well. And then after the debate performance, she started to say, I think it's a legitimate question to say, is this an episode or is this a condition? When people ask that question, it's completely legitimate of both candidates. Then when they brought up mental and physical testing, she said both candidates owe whatever test you want to put them to in terms of their mental acuity and their health, both of them. So then she starts warming up to the idea that maybe something has to get changed. And we know that, you know, it's been reported that she was involved ultimately when his successor was selected, and one of the top voices saying that he should, you know, pass the torch. So yeah, I think it seems incredulous, her words now, given her past comments.
All right, well, speaking of tests, here's a different type of test. Major announcement coming from the University of Michigan. The school announced recently that starting in fall 2027, incoming freshmen will receive only P, Pass, or NC no credit on their transcripts for their first semester. Traditional letter grades A through F will not appear on external transcripts or count towards students' GPAs during that first semester. The program will impact about 3,500 new students next year, and it's designed to help freshmen adjust to their college life while reducing academic stress. So eliminating letter grades for freshmen's first semester will improve their mental health. Fake news or not fake news? Chris, let's start with you.
Not fake news. Will it improve their mental health? Yes. Will it improve society? No. Grade inflation and coddling people is not a good thing. I was taught a very valuable lesson my first trimester of college. You know, you got to pay attention, you got to make sure you're showing up, and you have to make sure you do the best you can. And sometimes if you get a B+ instead of an A or something like that, it can wake you up and get you to take things more seriously. Bishop Robert Barron had a great ex-post. He said that this culture, he's speaking of it all, which consistently privileges feelings over objective value, has produced armies of dangerously uninitiated young people. In terms of Plato's metaphor, it has given rise to a lot of chariots with no sense of direction crashing into one another. And he makes like the illusion that, you know, back in the day, people in tribes would go out into the wilderness and have to brave the storm and then return back to their tribe in order to like build themselves, their character, and get better and be functional members of society, and they would learn the history of their people at that time. And I think it's really important for people to struggle really bad, and it is only college. So it's a good thing if you make a few mistakes. You learn, you get better, and you do it quickly.
All right, Bobby Ann.
I'm going with fake news on this one. I agree. This is absurd. We're going to get rid of grades in college because we want to make sure the students feel okay and can overcome challenges. I mean, it's ridiculous. We cannot be coddling our college-age students and telling them it's okay if you just pass-fail. It's just going to be a pass-fail. You, at that point in your life, you are presumably an adult, at least of legal age, an adult, and you need to be treated like an adult and take some responsibility. Having actual grades and having to study and do the work and put in the effort to get a good grade is part of becoming mature and becoming an adult. So I think it's a terrible idea.
Mike?
I don't know what this paddle means anymore, so I'm going to say not fake news, but I kind of agree with what she was talking about. Also, I don't remember much of my freshman year because I was going out too much. And I went to a big school like Michigan, another Big Ten school with Rutgers, and I do remember my freshman year taking some classes that were in that pass, no credit kind of category, building community. I mean, did we need to build a community on this campus? Like, what did I learn in that class? Raise your hand. You're gonna tell me as much as I did learn in that class. I have no idea. So there are some courses that you take early on in your freshman year that are nonsensical. I'm of the opinion of college football. We were talking about El-Sayed before. College football shouldn't be putting out polls until late October. College is kind of doing a similar thing here. You shouldn't get a grade until you actually really start college. Let's warm the kids up. So I really don't know if this means this or this, but I kind of agree with what everybody was saying.
All right, well, Mike, Fabiana, and Chris, thank you so much for joining us. Coming up, though, we're ranking 3 of the biggest box office hits and misses of 2026 so far. Which movies delivered and which ones flopped? We'll break it down next. All right, take a look at that. Well, those of us in the northern U.S. and Canada got a slightly dimmer sky this afternoon from a partial eclipse. This was the view on the other side of the Atlantic as a rare total solar eclipse swept across Europe. The path of totality covered parts of northern Spain, a small corner of northeastern Portugal, and a portion of Iceland. For Spain, it was the country's first total solar eclipse since 1905. A total solar eclipse happens when the moon moves directly between the sun and Earth, casting its shadow on our planet and turning day into twilight for a few magical minutes. And today, it's our Good Vibes Shot of the Day. And welcome back to Real Talk with Tiffany, the part of the hour where we sit back, relax, and talk movies. Now, summer 2026 has been a roller coaster at the box office. Some films soared and some, well, let's just say they didn't quite stick the landing. So with me now to help us sort the hits from the misses is NTD's official film fanatic, Matt Singerman. Matt, welcome back.
Thank you for having me, Tiff.
All right, before we dive in here, what was your criteria for choosing these hits and misses? And please tell me it wasn't just based on, which movies made you cry in the theater.
Well, that's always a part of it, the crying, of course, and how many tissues one uses. But it's also, look, the box office. Did it meet expectations? Did it go below? Did it go higher? That's big. And then how did the people feel about it? Did they like it? Did they respond to it? Or were they like, whatever? And then, of course, my most important criteria, how did Matt Singerman feel about it? Always super important. So that's my criteria.
All right, well, let's start with the slightly more painful part. What are the top 3 misses of the summer, starting with the bottom, number 3?
Well, let's start with number 3, yes. Number 3, Disclosure Day. Look, was that a miss or was that just meh? I mean, when you see a Steven Spielberg movie about aliens, you expect E.T., you expect War of the Worlds, you expect Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And when we saw the Disclosure Day trailer, we thought this was going to be so good. But look, at the box office, it was meh. And then seeing the movie, it felt like a derivative of everything Steven Spielberg did before in this genre. It didn't hit home, it didn't connect, and this is just not my reaction. Everyone I've talked to has felt the same way. It was meh.
I would agree with you. All right, number 2.
Number 2, look, we go with Supergirl. Not so Supergirl. In fact, a total bomb when it came to the movies. I mean, look, I know we showed the numbers of how much it cost versus how much it made, but what you also have to add in is how much they marketed. They probably another $125 million in marketing. This movie lost a lot of money right there, making it a miss and a bomb. But also the movie itself, the character, I don't think everyone loves Superman. Supergirl just didn't connect. The story was a little bit off. The villains weren't as good as the villains you want. It just didn't really go the way you want. So this was really a miss. I don't think we're going to be seeing Supergirl 2 anytime soon.
We'll see if crypto returns for us.
I hope so.
Superman.
I do like crypto.
All right, number 1.
Well, number 1, Should I sing it? Moana. Look, I mean, this movie, the box office was okay. You're always going to do well with the kids. But you know what? I think what's happened is Disney has gone and over-relied on the kind of real-life version of these animated movies. When we saw Beauty and the Beast, how excited were we? It was amazing. But now we've done like 20 of these, and Moana was like a shot-by-shot replication in animation. There was nothing new. There was nothing different. There was nothing exciting. The songs weren't as good. Big miss.
All right, now for
The
the
biggest
fun.
miss for me. The
All right.
biggest miss.
Now for the fun part, the ones that actually delivered. What are top 3 hits of the summer? Let's start with number 3 again.
Yes. Beat it, no one wants. Michael Jackson, the Michael movie. Look, I mean, it's a hit. It was a hit out of nowhere. It was made for $100-something million. It's made over $1 billion. Look, people, it was interesting, thought it might not do well because it kind of whitewashed some of the more controversial parts. But you know what we learned? People don't want to be dragged down. They just wanted to sing the songs, enjoy Michael Jackson, and look, the Michael Jackson actor was amazing, and the movie was a lot of fun. And guess what? Now we're going to get a Michael Jackson 2. It's coming, and you know what? It deserves to come, because it was a fun movie. I went in with skepticism. I came out singing and dancing Michael Jackson songs.
All right, well, speaking of 2, what's number 2?
Look, I mean, the Odyssey, it had such high expectations coming into it. You know, how could it even live up to it? And there was talk about, hey, is it gonna be historical? By the way, secret folks, it's based on a fictional story. So it's okay if they go a little out of the way. But the acting was great. Matt Damon was great. The cinematography was amazing. Everything was great about it. And it deserved to be number 2 on my list. Congratulations to The Odyssey.
All right, in first place.
A drum roll. And
Yes.
by the way, I think the Tiffany Meier Tonight crew saw this movie just the other night together. Spider-Man, Brand New Day. I mean, that movie, from a box office standpoint, it may become the top movie of all time. Amazing. It's done great. But you know what? It was a fun movie. It was so much fun. Tom Holland was so good. Zendaya was so good. The villains were so good. The surprises. Everything came together. You laughed. You were rooting for him. By the way, maybe I cried a little bit at the end, but I will never tell. But that was, and everyone I know has loved the movie. Great movie. Maybe the best superhero movie in years, and deserves to be number 1 on my list and number 1 at the box office. So there you go.
Indeed. Well, Matt, thank you so much for walking us through the best and not so best of summer 2026. Always fun having you on.
Always fun to be here, Tiff. I look forward to coming back.
And thank you for joining us for this edition of Tiffany Meier Tonight. I'm Tiffany Meier, and we'll see you tomorrow.